Yeah, a little positive reinforcement in itself.
It was delicious.
All right, so the question, this is interesting. This is the survey after the study that they took again, so how well they thought they were behaving in class. Not so many 4s anymore. A couple more 3s. Also, down here, my teacher speaks to me often about my behavior. They're a little bit higher now, so they actually realized after the study that they were being spoken to more than they had thought previous, which also affected how well they thought they behaved during class.
I think I know those two.
I'm sure I can, even though there's initials down there, I can point them out. Alright, and then this is post-study, what consequences that they think work best on them. And this is pretty substantial. This is a higher number than ever, and it was for fear of detention for bad behavior. So they're scared. Their punishment works the best for them. After the study, they thought this. And then what they think is commonly used in the school, fear of detention for bad behavior, or more free time in class, which is nice that they see that positive reinforcement is used more in the school than they had originally thought, because I feel like that's used quite often in the school as well. Alright, so this is, the students first chose 2 forms of punishment, and one form of reinforcement is the types of consequences they work best. Kind of discussed this a little bit. The teachers chose 2 types of reinforcement as consequences, so we can see that they differ a little in their understanding. And after, the students chose just 1 type of punishment. So please write down anything you guys are thinking, because I would love to get your input. And then students chose 2 types of punishment as consequences that are commonly used in their school, and the teachers chose 1 type of reinforcement. So even though the students think punishment's used, the teachers think reinforcement's used, which again I kind of agree with the reinforcement piece more. I don't know if kids have that stereotype of school, punishment, principal's office, of like the old days or whatnot, but I don't know. And then after the survey, the students chose 1 type of punishment and 1 type of reinforcement, which kind of goes on, piggybacks off what I just said. I think positive reinforcement is used much more than they see. Okay, so the researcher, teacher, and class, we all agreed that the class behaved very well. After the study, their behavior started going downhill. So when they knew they weren't being watched or they weren't keeping track of their own behavior, the wheels started coming off a little bit. And then we also, the teacher and researcher, we both found that the teacher gave more consequences than the kids were actually tracking, which is interesting. So as many times you talk to a kid, they probably only hear it once out of the 5 times that you say something to them. So a recommendation that I found was, it's a good idea to have some sort of classroom rules or an expectations poster in the room, because each class has its own expectations. I mean, if you float around between classes, some classes are loud and boisterous, kids get away with a little bit more than other classes. So if you had some sort of rules or guidelines posted in your classroom, when they come in, they know what their job is. They don't have to get confused about it. I mean, some of the kids we work with, it's hard for them to remember to do certain things on their own. So like I said, that's my expectation poster up there. So, and the 2 of them, there's not one consequence that works better than the other. They're 2 different tools. One diminishes behavior while the other reinforces it. There's not going to be a perfect class where all you're going to do is give positive reinforcement or punishment. There should be a combination of both. And it should be, just as the curriculum's differentiated for each class or for your students, they're all different, classroom management should be as well. I don't think there's not a one universal way that you're going to manage one classroom. It could be different between periods. Each class is unique from the next. And then I also thought that it would be a good idea to develop a survey similar to the one that I developed, or maybe one on your own, to get a feel, just like you pre-test for the kids where they're at academically, you could pre-test what consequences work best on them. So if everybody in the class was very well behaved, you didn't have to punish them, or you didn't have to threaten, you didn't have to speak to them much, that you know that positive reinforcement would work better with that crew. And also, if you have one student that's a big behavior problem, you can just go to your file cabinet, pull out their survey, and say, calling home is going to be the most effective, or keeping them after school is going to be the most effective. So you can grab it right by the reins. And then the limitations to this study, I only observed one 8th grade class, and it was for 15 days. Perhaps doing it with other grade levels, more students, a longer duration, maybe different school districts even.
You know what, I was just going to say too, and it really struck me, is that's your 6th period flex class, isn't it?
No, this is the period. This is just a regular general 8th grade.
I was thinking that's why the whole punishment was so...
Right, no, this was a different class. But also I'd like to get the administration's opinions also. I think that would have been a useful tool. I really wish I had done that.
Yeah, me too.
And then any questions or comments, guys, please fire them off, because I would love to include them in my manuscript. Sir?
Pick me.
Yes, sir.
One part. I mean, I like your project. It's really good. Very appropriate. The ticket out the door piece.
Yes.
Is very effective. That's something that I think that we can all use more effectively and efficiently in our school. When kids actually fill out a ticket before they leave the classroom,
they're owning it.
Yeah, they're going to own it. They're going to say, well, you know, actually, this is true. But then for the teacher to establish some accountability, what are you going to do with that information the next time they come in?
Right.
Like, actually have perhaps even like a classroom meeting and say, here's what happened last time. What you told me was that this, and this.
Right, and this is how you wrote it too. It's coming from them. Yeah, that would be awesome.
I like that a lot.
If you were having a problem with a particular class or even one student, you could have all the students do a ticket out the door, and that would hold them accountable. Definitely, great idea.
That's good.
I will definitely add that.
It's so interesting. What's the class makeup? I'm just curious. I mean, are there a lot of good students in that class, or?
Not necessarily.
Well, define
they're
good.
colorful.
You know, I mean, I think, okay, colorful, or like
mixed
families
ability, heterogeneity.
value
Yeah,
education, you know.
Definitely.
It's interesting that punishment is just so prominent in their minds.
Right. Well, I mean, it was definitely a mixed group by far.
The other thing is when you said about punishment, I kept, every time that you would refer to punishment, you also kind of parallel that with consequence. So, because I see there's a difference between punishment and consequence.
Right.
And there's a difference.
Right.
Yeah, but kids don't. For them, consequence is always the negative.
Negative. That's, when I went over it with them in the beginning, they were like, really? I mean, at least 3/4 of the class had said consequence could be a good thing. I was like, well, if you want to promote a behavior, it definitely can be. It's just something that follows the behavior.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
John, did you use the word fear in the survey?
I did.
And I'm not questioning the use of that. I was just wondering, because if you're thinking about Holberg's moral development and sort of executive function, you know, the fear-based self-control or fear-based judgments are really still based on sort of the criminal and police level of moral development, where I'm only going to respect someone if I'm afraid of them,
Right.
and they can hurt me.
That's,
You know,
interesting.
It's the crime punishment thing, and it would be interesting. It would be interesting. I don't know this, but it would be interesting, I think, to see if there were anything out there on, you know, whether they have internalized or internal or external locus of control, sort of that whole executive skill.
Right, it might not be fully developed yet.
Yeah, something, because when Percy was talking about the ticket out of there, I was thinking, you know, the ticket out of there may be just another way of avoiding punishment.
Right.
You know, so, not that it's a bad thing.
No,
but
that's
you have,
interesting,
like,
though.
when you talk about differentiating discipline, if you had a class that was all really kind of stuck in that crime and punishment mode, and then you might have another class that's moved a little beyond that,
Right.
then the crime and punishment kids might really just only think about punishment.
Right, it's true.
Whereas the other, you know, and you might be able to tie that to learning,
Would be interesting
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
with her advanced algebra class, to see if those kids are for,
Yeah,
Right.
To do like a sister study.
Cross, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know,
To
I'm
see
just-
some comparison.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
We also need to split it into how many females, how many males are in there. That might,
Yeah.
that might shift it onto
Gender
Right, a
balance.
different
Yeah,
gender.
That might be interesting.
That would have been interesting to look at what the kids
And time of
responded
day, I
to,
think, is huge.
depending on male or
This
female.
is the time of the day when they're most efficient.
Right, and I didn't want to pick the first class that we come into because they're all
Right.
half
No,
asleep.
absolutely.
So.
Oh, yeah, they're all torqued up.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're colorful,
Or
they're
that-
very
that
colorful.
It was a good group.
I'm curious about what kind of impact you could observe just by simply telling your kids, "I'm studying your behavior.
Right.
I'm just keeping track."
And just saying,
I'm
planting the
recording,
seed.
'cause it
Sort of like
seemed-
what I did here, but
Yeah.
Yeah, because you made that
Just making
statement
it
as
in a
soon as
sense.
the study
Yeah, the wheels
was
came off.
over.
Yeah.
You said the wheels came off.
yeah, they definitely started going downhill quick.
Once we had the
It
pizza
was
party
pretty
was over.
amazing.
No, that's
Yeah,
not true. They're fine.
yeah.
Well,
Hanging
But-
that.
that just talks about how concrete they are.
Yeah,
They need more.
When
That's
someone's
true.
not listening, or when someone's not looking, it's over.
and this is a
Yeah.
hugely concrete class to begin with.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, like,
It's
you
the
kind of
old,
all wraps into one little.
It's the old Santa Claus is coming to town. You know, like, you better be good. Watch out.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Or not.
Yeah, it's true.
John, how many days you said, how many days?
It was 15 days. It was 2 days before the 15 that I gave them the survey and kind of went over the rules with them and made the poster, and then it was a 15-day stint.
This doesn't fit into the research in the sense that you had such a short time. But did you see any kind of change in any of those kids? I
Well,
don't
I mean,
mean
as a result of.
as a result of this, because, I mean, you had a very concrete organization. So-
during the study,
so-
definitely we saw a change. They were great. And then after the study, it kind of went downhill. But I think the change for them happened in their head in the sense that they picked a different consequence in the end, that they saw positive reinforcement was used more than they had originally thought because they hadn't chosen it at all,
I
which
think
is
that-
nice
I
because
think
that's
that, yeah.
breaking out of the...
I think that some small thing has to be in the report that happens. I think that it's a question that at least circled in my mind in terms of
Yeah, because
On
isn't that
the
what you want?
payments, yeah,
Like, all of a sudden you
Yeah.
want them to be actually more aware.
Aware,
not
yeah,
be right,
absolutely,
just
self-awareness.
being of what's going on.
So how much, that's the word, I mean, how, did they become more self-aware or not? And, because
I think they definitely
the
did.
changes might be very subtle, you know.
We
most
should
teachers
just
can pick those up and
start giving them
so-
tickets out the door again and see if their
See what
behavior
happens.
starts
that
going
might be
back
a
the
good
other
thing
way.
to
That would be
Paula,
interesting
you've
to
been
see what happens.
waiting so patiently.
Yeah, I'm good. I have a few things that I just was wondering about. And as a teacher, I would wonder, like Em, I wonder about sort of like your response after the study too. Did your behavior change in any way? Like, were you like, okay, the study's over?
Well, it
I'm
was
good.
interesting, during the study, I was having trouble with one student who would come in here after lunch with his lunch and continue to gnaw on it
Yeah.
during class.
Yes.
And that one student took away a lot of my focus because he wasn't prepared for the class, but he was still having his lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's over with now, or it was over after
A couple
of
mentioning
yeah.
after they had to write down
So that
3 or
was
4
that
times.